But unfortunately, when people think about their food, because of the misinformation about their food, because of the implicit bias about their food, now they just automatically think my food must not be good.
Hey everyone, welcome to Food Culture Curious. I am your host, Arely Gutierrez. As a first gen Mexican American, and especially now working in healthcare as a dietitian, I have seen firsthand how a lack of cultural inclusion can negatively impact our patients. And I want to help change that. So I started Food Culture Curious to have impactful conversations with healthcare professionals of different cultures and backgrounds to get their insight on how to be more culturally inclusive in our nutrition recommendations. It can make all the difference in the world to our patients. Let's continue this journey together with today's episode. Hey everyone, welcome to Food Culture Curious. My name is Arely. I'm a registered dietitian on a mission to help healthcare professionals be more culturally inclusive in their nutrition recommendations. Today we have with us Esosa Osagiede. She is a registered dietitian with nearly 5 years of experience dedicated to helping folks transform their relationship with food and create generational health. Her philosophy centers on the belief that food should be enjoyed, not feared, and that a balanced diet is flexible and not perfect. Welcome, Esosa.
Hey, excited to be here.
Yes, you instantly attracted me with that reel.
Yeah, I'm loving it. I want to pull people in with that type of shaking up to the nutrition culture.
Yeah, because I talked to you previously, and like I mentioned, it's something you don't even think about. Just all the different spaces where cultural inclusion is so important. For those of you that are listening, I'm talking about a reel that I came across where she talks about how you can incorporate soul food into post bariatric nutrition care. And that's something that I saw, and I was like, I want to learn more about that. I want my listeners to learn more about that. So thank you for being here. But before we get into that, let's learn a little bit more about you and
Mhm.
specifically your food culture. So, can you talk
Yeah.
to us a little bit about what factors influence your food culture?
Absolutely. So, something I always talk about is my cultural background. I am Nigerian and I'm Black American. My mom is from Chicago, Illinois, and my dad is from Nigeria, specifically Benin. And marrying those two cultures together has been amazing. I feel like I get the best of both worlds, and I get to talk to African Americans and totally understand where they're coming from, talk to Nigerians, totally understand where they're coming from. So I had the privilege of, I always say I had the privilege of growing up with those two type of cultures in my house.
Wonderful. Let's dive a little bit more into it. What would you say were some staples growing up as far as your proteins, your starches, and your produce?
Yeah, so I can just remember every Sunday after church, it would be something like candy yams. Because again, my mom is the African American one. Mom is usually the one that cooks. So it's always some type of soul food after church. So candy yams, it could be smoked turkey or in the greens, right? We always have a pot of greens, whether it's collard greens, turnip greens, or mustard green. We'll have some type of black eyed peas, possibly that's on the menu. Mac and cheese. Definitely gotta have the mac and cheese there as well. And maybe even cornbread might pop up on that Sunday. But other than that, when I think about my Nigerian side, you never know what you get on the weekday. You can get some red stew with rice and corn. You could do some plantain. We might have some cassava, which would be gari or fufu, with some type of soup like a goosey soup or oh, I love vegetable soup. That's usually my go-to, or okra soup. Okra is huge. Crayfish, it's more of a seasoning or spice. Beef is a really big one. A bean, yeah, I can really go on. There's so many types of food. Yes, I would say those are some meals that you could typically see in my house.
Perfect. Tell us a little bit more about any cultural holidays that you celebrated and what foods and drinks you saw during those times.
Yeah, so I will say when it comes to my Nigerian side, we celebrated this festival. It's called Igwe Festival. And Igbo Festival is essentially giving thanks to our ancestors for the new year, for the previous year. And we would see foods like, again, ogusi soup, vegetable soup. We actually have kola nuts, and kola nut is not something on a regular basis. Kola nuts are specifically for special occasions. So you might see kola nut at weddings. You could definitely find it at Igbo Festival. And then for, when I say African American, I will say we did not celebrate Juneteenth heavily when I was younger. We didn't start celebrating really until more so when I was in high school and beyond. So Juneteenth is something we definitely celebrate. We try to have a lot of red items. That is a significance for perseverance, growth in our community, togetherness, and it's usually in the form of, when I have a hibiscus tea that's there that is red, or corned beef. Love corned beef. That I feel is a bit more of a holiday food as well for us. But yeah, Igbo Festival, Juneteenth are the ones we celebrate the most. But of course, we do all the other holidays. Christmas is really big. Anything to get people together, we're there.
I'm gonna give you one funny thing that happened to me.
Yeah.
So in the Mexican culture, when we have a carne asada, when we have a barbecue, there's specific foods that we have, and it'll lean more towards like fajitas and grilled chicken, and just those are the things that I think about when I hear cookout. And then one time I was invited to a friend's cookout in North Carolina. And I showed up and we brought tortillas and grilled chicken because that's what we think about, right? And we show
Yeah.
up and they had like burgers and hot dogs. And they're like, why did you bring seasoned grilled chicken and tortillas to the cookout? And I'm like, this is what we're used to.
Okay, that is so funny. That's a good point. I didn't even think about the cookouts. Now, for us, if I would have showed up, I would have some rib, some baked beans, and maybe some grilled veggies, and they probably would have been like, "Okay, what ribs? All this, okay."
Yeah, it's funny the things that we're used to when we think barbecue or cookout, grilling outside.
Exactly.
So right now that holidays are coming up, you mentioned Christmas. For Thanksgiving, is there anything different that you guys do? Or is it I know for us, it's like the staples. What is it like
Yeah.
for you guys?
I would definitely say the staples. Like I mentioned, turkey and ham typically only shows up Thanksgiving, but it is still gonna be your candy yam, your mac and cheese. You're gonna have some type of greens with a fatty meat, or we tend to try to go leaner meats and do a smoked turkey and the greens. When it comes to desserts, now there's always gonna be a spread. That's why I was telling my clients with it. You can always have more later because it's like you want a piece of everything. You'll have sweet potato pie, not to be confused with pumpkin pie. You'll have like a pound cake. My grandma does one with a caramel dressing on top or icing on top. It's so good. You might even see banana pudding, peach cobbler. Yeah, I'll say those 4 desserts are usually on the spread, but yeah.
Those are the staples.
Those are the staples, and I'm thinking, I'm like, I've definitely noticed my Nigerian side, they don't really do desserts like that. The sweet tooth thing, I feel like is a bit more American.
That's funny. Certain cultures are like that. I remember I was talking to my friend, she's from Vietnam. And she told me that over there, if someone tells you, oh, your dessert isn't too sweet, that's a compliment. So it could be it's
Mm.
maybe not a thing
Yeah.
in the Nigerian culture to have that sweet tooth.
No, I actually, when I went to Nigeria this summer, and I was like, "Y'all, give me a cupcake. Let's go get a cupcake somewhere." So we're hunting down for actual desserts, and when I finally get it, I'm like, "Wow, this tastes like bread."
Oh, no.
This tastes like regular bread. But it's because they thought it don't taste sweet. I'm like, it's crazy. I am used to what sweets taste like here. Yeah, I would definitely say so far, America has overachieved in the dessert category.
Yeah, that's so funny. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your personal food culture and the influences that affect it. So, I would love to talk more about specifically what your niche is and how you're working to be culturally inclusive with that population.
Yeah, so I would say my niche is fat loss, bariatric nutrition, and women's health. So I work really closely with those that have PCOS, those who are premenopausal or perimenopausal and postmenopausal, or even going through menopause. So yeah, I would say women's health, fat loss, bariatric nutrition. And I love those spaces. At first, when I first started social media and first got out there, I was a little bit nervous about weight loss because it's so saturated and I don't want to contribute to this space that just feels so, I don't know. It has hurt people's self esteem in a way and has made people feel as though they can't live their life until they've reached a certain point. So I was nervous to get in, but now that I'm in it 4 years later, I have realized I bring a type of, like, confidence to the space for people instead of them feeling like they can't eat their foods anymore or can't enjoy Thanksgiving or those holidays with their family anymore and feel isolated. They feel more empowered while they're losing fat, building muscle, improving their lab results, and still again be in that community space. So I love that. And then when it comes to bariatric nutrition, that is definitely a space I would have never saw myself in. I was going through the internship. They were like, "Oh, do you wanna do a bariatric rotation?" I declined, but as a dietitian, I had some people because again, I was on social media talking about fat loss, muscle gain, cultural foods, and I had a person reach out. She was like, "I've had bariatric surgery. I'm about a year out, and I love your message. Can you work with me?" To brush up on bariatric nutrition and fell in love with it, fell in love with the community, and realized that think about how many Black dietitians, there's only 2.6% in the dietetic profession, and then even smaller when it comes to bariatric nutrition. And if you think about diabetes, if you think about obesity rates, it does affect the Black community heavily. Sometimes they're like, "Okay, do I wanna get this surgery that could really help me in my health, or am I gonna give up my cultural background?" And I have to bridge that gap for them to recognize, like, "Hey, you don't have to give up your cultural background or give up those, like, warm, fuzzy feelings with family in order to achieve long-term health." So, I truly enjoy bariatric nutrition. I'm telling you, I tell people, "Go to school, you never know, just keep going, you just never know what you fall into."
Yeah, and I think we have to remind other healthcare professionals how food is so much more than just the nutrients and calories it contains, right? Like you said, those
Gosh.
warm, fuzzy feelings of sharing a meal with your family or taking part in holiday traditions. That's so important. And I am not as knowledgeable in bariatric nutrition, but I have had some family members that went through bariatric surgery. And
Mm,
one of the things that they really opened up about was how they felt like there was that struggle post surgery to be able to go out to eat with their family or to be able to
absolutely.
enjoy a birthday party or the birthday cake. That emotional part of the food was a
Yeah.
challenge for them. So I would love to send them your way to your
Yeah,
Instagram so that they can learn more about how to not lose their cultural foods whenever they're trying to recover from that surgery. Can
absolutely.
you, for the people that are listening, can you talk a little bit more about particular nutrition challenges that the bariatric population faces both post surgery and then a year out or so?
Yeah, so challenges that they face when you first get your nutrition consultation before bariatric surgery, you sit with a dietitian for an hour and a half max, and they give you these sheets of paper. They tell you all about what you need to do right after surgery, but there's just such a drop off for 6 months post-surgery or a year, 2 years post-surgery, and when people start there's no forecasting like, "Hey, this might happen, weight gain might happen." I feel like that does the bariatric community a huge disservice because, A, the nutrition material that they're given does not account for any foods that they're familiar with. Now, of course, we can all do, again, a bit of bariatric nutrition. It's similar to diet culture in a way, like, here's these certain foods that you could follow, and you can't eat more than that. But after that period of 6 months after surgery is over, you have to get acclimated back into a routine that you can focus on long term. So again, there is nothing there for them. Plus, holidays come up, birthdays start coming up. You want to hang out with people again. You might be feeling yourself, but you're feeling anxious when you go out about food. So yeah, I just feel like that is a huge disservice to that community. There's no gap that talks about what you do long term. Plus, nutrition education or information tends to be very whitewashed, for lack of better words. Yeah.
What are some of those side effects that you mentioned that they may not have been warned about?
Yeah, so I would definitely say dumping syndrome is one. Dumping syndrome meaning if you're taking too many carbs all at once, people tend to have some type of diarrhea or maybe even vomiting if it gets that bad. Dehydration is a really big one that happens because they don't want to just drink water all the time, but there's no other information about other things they can drink. Or again, weight gain. Unfortunately, diet culture teaches us this. Sometimes it has weird is ugly headed to bariatric nutrition as well. Is people think once you get surgery, like your trajectory is down with your weight, and that's just not the case. Sometimes there can be regain, and you have to figure out. Let's figure out: are you stressing a little bit more? Are your sleep is off, or whatever it might be? The bariatric nutrition in the clinics, it just focuses on food, like you said, just nutrition. And there's no nuance to life, stress, what people have going, like relationships, how to navigate boundaries. There's no mindset chat.
No,
Just
absolutely.
my thing.
So some things for people to be aware of. Like I know one of my relatives was telling me that they were having a lot of issues with hair loss because they just could not get enough
Yeah.
vitamins. They were having issues with muscle loss because they couldn't consume enough protein
Protein.
to keep up with the needs. So just all of these things that people need to be aware of, like these challenges that happen post surgery. So how do you help your population bridge that gap, like you said, to be
Mhm.
able to include their cultural foods? First of all, why do you think that people think they can't have their cultural foods? And then how do you help
Mhm.
them with that?
Oh my gosh. I was just talking about something on my story today. I said, it's interesting that when you ask somebody, is kale healthy? The number one answer is yes, kale is kale. But you ask them, are collard greens healthy? And it depends on the way it's cooked. Like, why do we look at one food and automatically give it a stamp of approval, but the other food is, it just depends. It depends. If we look at collard greens and kale, it's fresh in the grocery store. You just picked it up with your two hands. They're both raw form. They have similar antioxidants, minerals, vitamins, fiber. But unfortunately, when people think about their food, because of the misinformation about their food, because of the implicit bias about their food, now they just automatically think my food must not be good. You typically don't see collard greens, grits, cornbread, mackerel, like all these things. You don't see those things in nutrition education either. If you Google healthy food, you'll see kale come up. You might even see avocado now, even though they was hating on that once upon a time. So you just don't see your food there you would think I go into nutrition education straight off the bat talking about healthy eating, but no, I'm actually dissecting, kind of peel back the layers of their internalized bias that they have. So we have to peel those layers back before we get into even trying to call your food healthy at that point. So what I do with them, I know this is a follow-up question, but I typically have them let's write down what you typically eat. Let's just write it down. And don't even try to make it sound healthy on paper. Don't even try to give me a healthy version of it. Just write down what you typically eat. And I dissect the different ingredients in the food so they can figure out, okay, what is the fat? What is the carb? What is the protein? And then I feel like in those moments, I see so many light bulbs go off. Oh my God, I didn't realize that. So it's actually just maybe I need to reduce the oil. Or you know what I'm saying? So I just love seeing that light bulb go off for them during those times.
Yeah, I can definitely relate because I hear it a lot, even in my own family, is that, oh, I would lose weight, but I love Mexican food. And my response is okay, but then I'll mention some more vegetable heavy dishes, lower
Yeah.
calorie dishes that are also Mexican food, right? So I'll be like, well, what about calabacitas con queso, chicken soup or beef soup? Like all those are
Mhm.
all still Mexican food. They're more like weight loss friendly dishes. And we can take the foods you're currently eating and figure out ways to add more nutrition or to
Yes.
cook it a little bit differently. But you don't have to give up your foods.
Exactly. It's really sometimes comes down to rearranging your plate because again, my culture very very rice heavy, very bean heavy, just very starch heavy, and there's nothing wrong with that because it's full of fiber and they don't even realize it. Okay, full of prebiotics, don't even realize it. So really, I'm always telling them, okay, instead of having the agusi soup only take up like this small bowl you have it in, let's make it bigger. It's the one that has the veggies in it, has the protein in it, and then let's make it very smaller. So again, we can balance out your blood sugar that way. I'm usually talking to somebody who has diabetes or insulin sensitive or insensitivity. But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And specifically, when talking about bariatric nutrition,
Mhm.
how do you help them adjust for their needs, right? Being able to include the soul food that you were mentioning in your reel.
Yeah, so when we think about calculating needs, it's really more so when it comes to bariatric nutrition, there's no calculator for it, like Mifflin St. George. So I typically tell them, okay, start with that 90 grams of protein. I always start with the protein first. So let's look at how we can get protein in on our day with 90 grams. And then we pick out certain foods that they're more familiar with that they typically eat. And then from there, we're looking at the food label and then showing like on the palm of their hand, or they typically have a food scale or going through that process. So really it's just breaking down. I always break down protein and fiber first so they can see what those foods look like. And they're always shocked by how much of those nutrients are in their foods. And oh, wow, I don't really have to try venture out too far. Like I thought I would have to throw everything away out of my refrigerator or pantry. No, not necessarily. It really is a process. Tedious, but needed process.
Yeah. A lot of people think if they're gonna eat healthy, quote unquote, that it's gonna be that grilled chicken and that broccoli and the brown rice. They don't understand that their own cultural foods are already so full of nutrition, and we
Yes.
can help them work with that.
Yes, and we talk about white rice all night. They are like, okay, so I have to do brown rice. I'm like, not necessarily. Brown rice probably has 1 gram more fiber. Let's find a way we can get 1 gram more fiber in other parts of our meals. That's another huge one. White rice. I've heard that's in a lot of cultures though. I've worked with Indian folks, Black folks, Haitian, a lot of Black folks. With the diaspora, Asian, but it's always rice. And of course, in diet culture, it teaches us no rice. So that is so interesting to me that rice touches so many cultures, yet it's the one that everybody is so afraid of. But yeah.
Yeah, it's so sad. Oh my gosh. Like I went to a health fair recently, right?
Mhm.
And they had students from one of our local universities talking about nutrition. So I went up to their booth to check out what they were saying. And I told the student there, I was like, present to me, like I'm one of the people here. And she's okay, over here. You know how you need to stay away from white rice. So we're going to do brown rice instead, or we're going to do quinoa. And I told her, but you also explained to them that the difference is 1 gram of fiber, and we can always add more fiber, right? We don't need to get away from white rice. So I feel like
Yes.
even now, even in places that are well meaning, there's still
Yes.
so much myths
So
and misconceptions.
exactly. And I think it's about another story. I was actually a dietetic intern at this point, so I wasn't as confident yet. But I will say I was watching a dietitian. She was a white lady, and it was a Black man who came in, and he had his food log. They were going through the food log together. He had type 2 diabetes. And she was like, "Grits. What are grits?" And he tried to explain to her the grain, like, she was like, "Oh, you can stop eating that and do like oatmeal instead." And I'm like, "Wait."
Wow.
After he left, because again, if I was a dietitian, I'll definitely stop that session right there. But after he left, I was like, why oatmeal and not grits? I'm just curious. She's oatmeal has more fiber, and I'm like, about 2-3 grams. He could have had something else on the side. I love
And fruit with it, like
fruit. Like I love adding vegetables to my grits. Just in that moment, just seeing this is why. And I don't like, for me as a dietitian, I might be Nigerian and African American, but like we said at the beginning of the call, I don't know all of the foods that are out there. I still ask my clients, like, hey, give me a good list of your food. I will Google your food. I will go through labels of your food. And I feel like I wish more dietitians would have that in their head. You don't need to know everything. You don't know everything. And I think your clients will feel more appreciative to see you like really studying their food, trying to really pick out the healthy parts and make it in a way help you change the way that you maybe make up your plate or your meal or instead of focusing so hard on swapping.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I feel like if anything, it's like lazy education to just be like, you know what, I don't know what that is. So let's just switch it out for something that I am familiar.
Oh, that's good. Labor education.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I would love to hear an example, if you have one off the top of your
Mhm.
head, of how you've helped a patient, either post-bariatric surgery or diabetes, include their cultural foods and still reach their health goals.
Oh, yeah. So I have a client. We had been working on and off. So it was about 6 months after her surgery. She joined my program, the Nourish Mindset Academy. And we worked in that program very closely together, essentially doing the things I discussed so far on the call, picking apart her Haitian food, figuring out what she enjoys the most, what she does not enjoy, what she's willing to try, what she's tried already that's out of her culture of food that she enjoyed. Really going through all of these different foods that can possibly be in her meal rotation. And then she got to a place where she, in about a year, lost about 55 pounds. And then during that whole process, she was looking at everybody else. I'm like, no, we gonna focus on you only. This is a marathon, not a sprint. All the affirmations, all the mindset work in between that. But then again, she got to where she wanted to be. Then she was even able to get pregnant, something her husband wanted to do. So then we started working again for maternal nutrition. That's why I love my clients that come back to me at different phases of life because nutrition is always evolving and always need something at different points in your life sometimes. So she had a healthy pregnancy. Her first 2 children, she had preeclampsia. She ended up developing gestational diabetes, but for the 3rd child and then she also had to have a C-section, but for the 3rd, had none of those issues because of the work that she did before getting pregnant, the changes to her diet, which felt so comfortable for her that didn't feel like it was a strain. I always tell my clients, if you start a diet, if you start something that requires too much brain work, you're gonna stop. So you wanna make sure you are like I said to her many times and most of my all of my clients, you wanna make sure you are starting something that you can continue to do for the rest of your life. I know it sounds like the rest of my life, but seriously, you don't wanna feel as though, again, you can't hang out with people or you can't really taste food anymore. So, yeah, I would say that is a huge success, kinda seeing her transition in life and get those things that she thought, like, it was done.
Wow, look at you changing lives. And I'm pretty sure that was a big contribution to bringing this new life into the world. That's the power of nutrition right there.
Yes, safe births. We already know all about maternal mortality, and that touched me like, okay, wow. You just never know how where nutrition will touch in lives. So,
Exactly.
yes.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing about everything that you're doing. I would really love for people, if they want to work with you, to be able to find you. So, where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook at Your Melanated Dietitian. My premier program is the Nourish Mindset Academy. It is exclusively for women who, one, you have had bariatric surgery, want to get fat loss, gain muscle, build a healthy relationship with food, and change your mindset one habit shift at a time. So yeah, you can follow me at those handles, my handle.
Perfect. Thank you again for taking the time. I'm sure everyone who's listening is going to love it. So, all right, everyone. We'll catch you next time. If you are interested in supporting this podcast, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/food culture curious. Or as always, you can support by sharing, following, or rating this podcast. Every click from y'all means the world to me. And now for a quick disclaimer. Food Culture Curious is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not take the place of medical advice from licensed healthcare professionals. If you need to seek medical advice, please speak to your healthcare provider. Thank you for listening.